Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. Happy Friday, it's October 17th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. How AI chatbots interact with youth is the focus of a new California state law.
It requires companies that make companion bots to share information annually.
We'll learn more about some of the first legislation to rein in AI chatbots. But first, these headlines. A new California law signed by Governor Gavin Newsom this week could bring red light cameras back to city and county intersections. The legislation simplifies how cities enforce red light infractions by eliminating certain requirements, such as facial identification, and sending the citation to the registered owner. It would also lower those fines from $500 for the first offense to $100. The changes are meant to help cities bring back red light cameras by making the program more cost efficient. Deb Banks is with the Sacramento Area Bicycle Advocates.
Because I think it's a public health crisis and we really want people to be safe on our streets. They deserve to be able to get from point A to point B safely. To me, that's a public right.
The nonprofit Insurance Institute for Highway Safety found that cameras reduced red light crash fatality rates by 21%. The city of Fresno was awarded nearly $5 million to provide affordable housing for homeless veterans. The housing will be constructed at the site of the La Hacienda Mobile Estates. The property used to be called Trails End Mobile Home Park. The park was riddled with maintenance problems until the city intervened, and the nonprofit Self-Help Enterprises took over operations in recent years. The funding comes from the state's Project Home Key program. The attacks in Israel by Hamas 2 years ago sparked activism among students at college campuses in the U.S. The students were largely calling for a ceasefire in the conflict. As KVPR's Rachel Livenall reports, the peace plan announced this month still leaves some of those students with lingering doubts about true peace.
Students at UC Merced were among those who staged mass protests at college campuses last year and supported the people in Gaza. The protests have quieted down, but activism around peace in the Middle East remains. Carlo McCallick is a previous leader of UC Merced's chapter of the Students for Justice in Palestine group.
Although the bombs have stopped falling, Gaza is still in rubble and millions of people are traumatized, with hundreds of thousands most likely deceased.
But he says their demonstrations worked. It helped bring attention to the devastation and harkens back to mass protests against the Vietnam War.
Ultimately, all of those did end up being vindicated historically, and ultimately that did result in systemic change.
The peace plan is still in its early steps, and students say they'll keep a watchful eye on developments. For KVPR News, I'm Rachel Livenall.
The Fresno Yosemite International Airport landed on a list of best small airports in the country. The recognition comes from the Reader's Choice Awards by USA Today. The award recognized the airport for its expansion over the years, including the addition of more nonstop and international flights.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Body 20 in Fresno's Fig Garden Village, offering full-body electromuscle stimulation training sessions. It's a high-tech, time-efficient way to help preserve and rebuild lean muscle. Each 20-minute one-on-one session is guided by a certified coach using FDA-cleared technology. Body 20 accepts health savings account cards. More information available by searching the Fig Garden location at body20.com.
And now to our main story. Artificial intelligence is developing at breakneck speed, and while many view AI as the next best thing, others are trying to rein it in, especially when it comes to kids. Just this week, Governor Newsom signed a bill designed to protect children's mental health when interacting with so-called AI chatbots. Tech companies will now need to monitor chats for content around suicide and self-harm, and they must take steps to prevent kids from seeing explicit material. Khari Johnson with our news partner CalMatters says Senate Bill 243 is one of the first laws in the nation to regulate chatbots. That's despite Governor Newsom vetoing another bill that child advocates say would have been even stricter. To better understand what's at stake for tech companies and kids under this new regulation, I spoke with Khari about the changing AI landscape. And a note, you will hear references to suicide and sexually explicit content. Khari starts our conversation by breaking down SB 243 a bit more.
So Senate Bill 243 was introduced by Senator Steve Padilla from Chula Vista, and basically it puts in place a protocol for preventing the production of suicidal ideation, suicide or self-harm content to a user. And it requires companies that make companion bots to share information annually about the number of conversations that their technology has about self-harm. The bill does not include voice assistants like Alexa or Google Home.
Okay.
And it does not include chatbots and video games that are incapable of talking about mental health or self-harm.
And for people who aren't familiar, can you just tell us how AI chatbots work and sort of what kinds of things they're capable of and how they typically operate?
Sure. Basically, chatbots, it's easiest to think of them as input and output. Artificial intelligence can sound like magic, I think, sometimes when it's talked about what's possible, but basically they're trained on a big data set of text from internet, scraped from the internet or books or news articles, and that's all used to train an AI model. And then the output is a prediction of what the next word might be in a sequence. If this was a AI model trained on me, the next word after I love might be like, I don't know, snacks or something, But companion bots are different from the average language model because they're trained to carry on conversations and participate in multi-turn dialogue. And there are instances that are really well documented at this point of these models being willing to engage in sexually explicit conversations with kids or talk to them about self-harm.
Yeah, I want to get to that in just one second, but I thought first maybe you could tell us, do we know how widespread the use of these companion bots are among children?
Yeah, so Common Sense Media is a nonprofit organization here in California that's best known for rating movies and things like that in the past, but they do a lot more related to AI these days. And they did a survey earlier this year that found that roughly 3 out of 4 teens have used a companion bot at least once. I think it's worth noting that Common Sense Media did back a more restrictive law for regulating companion bots and how they speak with young people, AB 1064, which was vetoed by Governor Newsom. Common Sense Media also concluded in a study earlier this year that kids under 18 just shouldn't speak with companion bots in order to protect their mental health and prevent these documented instances of bots willing to engage in, inappropriate conversations with kids.
Yeah, as you mentioned, this new law that was approved, SB 243, is instituting some guidelines for use by younger users, including rules for when a kid might be having suicidal thoughts. Have there been any specific examples where a child or teen has used AI to discuss suicidal thoughts and maybe the chatbot potentially didn't respond in the best way? Do we have concrete examples?
Yeah, there's a couple of concrete examples. I think it's helpful to just remember the names of, people who aren't with us anymore. Sewell Setzer was a teenager from Florida who was speaking with a bot made by Character.ai, who's based here in California and a company that has close ties with Google. And they had extensive conversations with a bot that was made by that company before taking their own life. And Adam Reining, who was a teenager here in California, was effectively coached by ChatGPT is the language that they use in the complaint in a lawsuit that was filed against OpenAI, before taking his own life.
How have the companies responded to this new law?
I haven't really kept up, honestly, with the sorts of official statements that they used on this, but I know that, TechNet is a business organization that companies like Meta and OpenAI are members of, and that business group opposed Senate Bill 243 and the more restrictive AB 1064.
Okay, looking ahead, when the California state legislature goes back into session next year, are there any expectations that we might see more regulation of these AI companions or chatbots sort of forthcoming?
Governor Newsom, in his veto message of AB 1064, pledged to continue to work with the legislature next year on making companion bots safe for kids. But his veto message also said that AI is already shaping the world, and it's imperative that adolescents learn how to safely interact with AI systems. And he went on to say we cannot prepare our youth for a future where AI is ubiquitous by preventing their use of these tools altogether. So it seems like the governor is trying to consider additional protections while allowing for the less restrictive of these laws to go forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild to think about what the future could look like as artificial intelligence develops. And that makes me think, like, just to zoom out a little bit, Khari, because I know you've been covering artificial intelligence for many years. We have an idea of what could be next with AI? Just over the last year or two, AI capabilities have really seemed to accelerate. Where do you see things heading?
I think there's conversations about what the capabilities might look like, but, the first things that come to mind are that a number of super PACs were formed by influential, business executives or venture capitalists in California over the last couple of months, one of which pledged to put $100 million into backing pro-AI candidates. And so I think we're going to see money flow into states like California to influence AI legislation going forward. And so some of that may be an uphill battle. I think we're also going to continue to see efforts to restrict state regulation, like the kind of 10-year moratorium that was proposed by Congress earlier this year and the AI action plan that's been promoted by President Trump. Both of those signal a continued effort to prevent state regulation of AI. But I think there's a lot of examples of bills that went into effect this year that we're going to see roll out and play a role in people's lives. There's one bill that prevents the makers of AI from blaming AI from harming people, as a defense in court. AB 325 would prohibit tech platforms from acquiring businesses to use their pricing recommendations, which a number of people say is directly related to the affordability crisis. And AB 853 will require the makers of AI to supply the public with tools to identify AI-generated video, photos, and audio. And so that may help people better discern, generative AI content from things that were made by humans and, maintain a better grasp on reality.
Khari Johnson, tech reporter with our news partner, CalMatters. Thank you so much for breaking this down for us.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
And if you'd like to hear more about AI chatbots and their growing use among teens, listen to our August 7th episode. I spoke with a researcher at Common Sense Media about the growing trend of artificial companionship among younger users. And that is today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Sources and methods, the crown jewels of the intelligence community. Shorthand for how do we know what's real? Who told us? If you have those answers, you're on the inside, and NPR wants to bring you there. From the Pentagon to the State Department to spy agencies, listen to understand what's really happening and what it means for you. Sources and Methods, the new national security podcast from NPR.